All right, it is 8:30, but I think I'm gonna wait a few minutes, just as people kind of trickle on. So maybe we'll just wait like a minute or two and see if a couple more people join, and then we'll get started. So this is fun. I've never done anything like this at all before. Any of you who are on here who want to send me a little, hi, Michaela, message saying like, is the lighting okay? I kind of have this like bright lamp and I don't know if it's making it weird. Was it better before I did that? I don't know. Okay. Well, if it seems like it's a problem or if you can't hear or anything like that, let me know. And I'm not super tech savvy, but I would try to adjust it if it was something I could figure out. So I don't know if that light looks weird. It just seems really bright, at least on my screen. Okay, Michaela says that it's great. So good. All right. Thanks, Michaela. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm sure some people will hop on and some people will watch this tomorrow, which is awesome, or another day, whatever. So I think this is really fun. Thanks to everybody who sent me some responses to those questions. Hi, Natalie. Thank you. She says it seems okay. All right. Thanks to everybody who sent in some responses to those questions. That was helpful. And I'm actually going to start with one of the items from that. Michaela says she has Austin watching along with her. I wish you could send a pic too. Hi, Mandy. This is fun. Okay, so I just wanted to start out with this question that several of you filled out because it really gave me an interesting insight. So the question is, what have you been most stressed or concerned about during quarantine? And you can check all that apply. So the options on there were finances, homeschooling your kids, strained relationships due to current sardine-like living arrangements, feeling lonely or disconnected from other people, staying healthy or not getting COVID-19 or other. And until about sometime within the last hour, I had one more response come in. But until then, nobody said not getting COVID-19. Like nobody listed that as one of their big stressors, which kind of surprised me. But what I thought, oh, thanks, Kim. Hi. I think you're cute too. So I think what really surprised me about that, obviously, the reason that we're all being quarantined is because we're living in the middle of a pandemic. But I think what that kind of illustrates to me is there are all of these layers of stress right now. And so because there are these more immediate stressors, it's almost like they're taking precedence over the pandemic. And so there's just a lot going on, I guess, is what I wanted to point out. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of layers, and we may not even really be super in tune with what are we feeling? What are we feeling anxious or stressed or worried about? Because there's a lot going on, and some of us are feeling overwhelmed, and we're feeling busy, and we're just having to make a lot of changes and adjustments to our normal lifestyle. And so I think the point that I wanted to make is that it's really important to take some self-inventory and to say, am I feeling a little bit on edge or anxious? And what is that about? Is there some little part of me buried way deep down there that is nervous about getting the virus, or, anxious about somebody in our family getting it, or somebody that we care about that we're concerned about might be higher risk or something like that. And so I think that's important, and to articulate that. And so whether that's in a journal or to another adult, or I would say not to your kids, because we are trying not to stress our kids out. But if you have a friend or a group of friends or your mom or somebody that you could articulate that to, I think that's really good, just for you to kind of have some awareness of what is going on and why you might be feeling a little bit unbalanced. So that was something I kind of wanted to start out with. And I'm just going to kind of highlight a few principles that I think are helpful right now. And if you have questions that come up, feel free to put them in the chat. And I am going to try to address the questions that came in through the survey. And if I don't get, I think I'll get to all of them, but if I don't, then I'll try to send something else out after or do another video or something, so that hopefully I can address everybody who submitted questions. But kind of the first principle that I wanted to go over, I think this is really important, is that we need to focus on controlling what we can control. And I think this is just a time where we feel really unbalanced, or we can feel that way because, like I said, so many things are different right now. And so I think, part of how that is going to look is giving yourself a pass for some things. Hi, Amanda. Giving yourself a pass for some things, right? So some things that you might normally do really well, maybe you're going to struggle a little bit more. And also, I think it's really fair to just normalize some of the behavior that you might be feeling down about. Like if you're thinking, oh, I'm usually so good at keeping my house clean and I just can't do it. Or, I'm usually not so forgetful and I forgot my kids' Zoom class meeting or something. I think, think about when you or someone has a new baby. It's extremely normal for them to be forgetful, or, we kind of understand this is about sleep deprivation, right? If they have some behaviors that don't quite seem normal. And so I think we kind of just need to do the same thing with this time that we're living in. This is really unusual and we're all dealing with a lot of adjustments. And so we just need to be able to say, oh, well, this isn't my typical me, and I'm not living in my typical circumstances. And so it kind of makes sense, or I do have these anxieties and stressors that are kind of piling up. So, and Natalie says, your Marco Polo group is a good place for that too. Does everybody have a Marco Polo group through Relief Society? I love my Marco Polo group so much. So I hope everybody is finding ways to connect with other people. So something else I wanted to talk a lot about. Hi, Cindy. Michaela says she's got the quarantine situation and the new baby. So she's basically crazy face. Yes. I can't imagine. That's a crazy time for you. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about relationships and just how can you make the most of this time or survive this time, however you want to think about it. And we kind of had a wide range of responses to that question about, I can't remember exactly how it was worded, but how are you doing with your family relationships, people that you're living under the same roof with or not, some people maybe have expressed, we've had more time together and we've been able to slow down a little bit and reconnect. And then some people are feeling more stressed being together and feeling kind of claustrophobic and I need my space. And so we kind of had a range, right? So you could be anywhere on that spectrum, really feeling like this has been great. I love this time. I never want it to end. I want to stay in quarantine forever. Or you might be feeling like I really need a vacation from this, right? I really need to get away from this. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to make the most of your relationships and how to make things go the best way that they possibly can. So, one thing that I wanted to start out with is if you have a relationship in your mind, whether it's with a spouse or one of your kids or another family member, um, just kind of trying to ask yourself what you think the relationship needs. And you might be thinking that the relationship or you and that person need more time together, or you might be thinking that you need some time apart. You need some space from each other. Um, and I would challenge that if you say, we need some time apart. This is terrible. We need to get away from each other. Um, I would just challenge that by saying, have you been intentional in your time together? So, are you being intentional about spending time that is enjoyable, quality time, or have you just been stuck in the same house for weeks? Some of you might be in a situation where maybe your husband is working from home and everybody's home and everybody's in different situations right now, but you might be feeling like we need some time apart. And I would just say that could be true, but it could also be true that you need to be intentional about how you spend your time together. And so that kind of leads me to another idea, which is that healthy relationships benefit from healthy rituals. And so there's a lot of research to back this up. But a lot of you may do things like go on weekly dates or monthly dates. You probably have even more regular rituals that maybe you don't recognize, but maybe you always say hello and goodbye with a kiss, or we have faith-based rituals. Maybe you guys are really good at saying morning prayers or prayers when everybody gets home in the evening. There's a lot of rituals that center around leaving and coming home and things that we do when we're all together in the morning or all together at night, or on the weekend even. And your weekend might be looking different right now, depending on what's happened with your schedule. So those things are really, really important. And especially for couples, successful couples really are good at rituals. And for example, like the 6-second kiss is a real thing that John Gottman found, his successful couples that stayed together and were happy, they shared longer kisses. And so that's kind of something small and silly, but you can think about how during this time, maybe if you're struggling, some of your rituals have changed a little bit or gone away. And so if that's the case, then that's something that you can talk about with your spouse, and think of some ideas. Maybe you need to come up with some different rituals right now, different kind of date night ideas or time that you guys can be together alone. So those are some ideas. And if any of you have anything that's been working for you in that area, please share on the comments. I will keep reading things out that come in. But another question that you can ask, so we've kind of been talking about what is it that this relationship needs, but you can also ask yourself, is there something that this person individually needs? Some kind of needs that are not being met. And this kind of came up in my Marco Polo group, actually, my Relief Society Marco Polo group. We were kind of just talking about how, this is an observation, but I'm sure some of you might relate to this. Men often don't prioritize connecting socially the same way that women do. And so, and that is important for them, but I don't think they always seek that out the same way that we do. And so I think that's important for us to just notice. And I think if, you can recognize that you can't necessarily meet every need that another person has, but sometimes you can be a supportive. You can support your spouse or your child or whoever in getting those needs met. And so you might encourage him to connect with some friends, or you might set up a family Marco Polo group that he could be a part of, that he'd be interested in, or, you just need to be creative and help support that if you can. And maybe it's not social time. Maybe he really does need some time alone. And I think the more helpful you can be in kind of exploring with him what things would be restorative and productive, solo time, rather than just kind of like vegging in front of the TV or something that maybe isn't going to help him to feel better, And so those are things that you can just explore with him. Like, what do you think makes you feel really good? Like, what kinds of things could I help make sure you have time and space to do? And to just try to be supportive the same way that you would want him to support you. If you were feeling like you needed a break or you needed some time away. And so I think men often, maybe we don't all have the traditional roles in this group. Maybe there are some families where the woman is going to work and the man's staying home. But I think for a lot of us, our husbands are going to work, and they probably get a lot of their social time at work and connectedness with others. And so they might be struggling. You might be having some marital conflict or just noticing some additional stress that wasn't there before. And so you can help with that. You might have to be creative. And if anybody thinks of ideas too, after we have this conversation, I know sometimes when I'm in a class or something, I don't always think of things on the spot, and then sometimes I do later. So we can keep the conversation going. We can, I don't know, I'll look into how we can do that best. Maybe just adding comments, or like I said, maybe I'll upload another video if more things come up or something. So that is some of what I wanted to say about that. And then I wanted to address some of the questions that came in. We had some really good questions. Oh, okay. Cindy, I hope people don't mind that I'm just reading these out loud. Cindy says, we are the exact opposite of that. My husband works from home and I go to work. I can see what you're saying for sure. Okay. Yay. So we did find somebody who was kind of the opposite. Yeah. So, and that's the tricky thing. We have so many different like family configurations, and obviously my bias is I'm thinking about what it's like to be home with little kids, but some people, it's just different for everybody. Some people are managing older kids who are suddenly cooped up and home all the time. And I was talking to somebody whose kids are in high school, and she feels like they have gotten to a point where they never leave their rooms because they're just on their devices. So we were able to talk about some routines around that, and maybe establishing some routines, because that wasn't really something they had to deal with in the past because they went to school. And so she was actually feeling really lonely at home, even though her kids were all home, and her husband, who works from home. But he was doing his own thing. And then her older kids were kind of disconnected and doing their own thing, social distancing in their house. So that was sad for her. Anyway, so I did want to share, let's see, I'm going to go to some of these questions. And if you have ideas or answers to these, feel free to chime in, because I'm not a genius. Like, there are certain things that would stump me too. So, or things that I've struggled with myself. So one person asked about tips for doing church at home. If you are feeling like your spouse is not super into that, or isn't supporting very much. And this person said, if we do it, I have to be the one to organize everything. I feel like I can't get as much out of home church, and my kids aren't getting as much spiritually because it's all on me. I miss my church support system. I think we all kind of miss our church support system. I do, for sure. So there's a couple things going on there. First of all, that statement, my kids aren't getting as much spiritually because it's all on me. I think there's some, like, maybe some shame there, or some guilt. And I think I would challenge that a little bit and just say, good for you for making the effort. Maybe when you are feeling like you're carrying a lot of the burden, that's really hard. Um, and, my husband and I were talking about how there's lots of extremes. So sometimes the church will present a program or an idea, and it works really ideally in kind of like the traditional nuclear family that we expect, like, you know, um, and that's not always the scenario, right? So Chad has a cousin that we're close with, and she's single and she's in her 40s, and Come Follow Me and the, study at home resources, all of that was really designed to help families learn together and connect. And I think for her, she might feel more disconnected, right? Because she doesn't have a family at home to study with. So I think we just have to be creative, right? But as far as this person, and that cousin, she does connect with some people. I think she does a group where she studies with people. And I keep talking about Marco Polo, but she does a Marco Polo group where she does scripture study, and Chad's on there and some other people, and she connects with them. And I think that's awesome. But I think to this person who's saying, I feel really alone and I feel like I'm having to do church all by myself, I would say to not take it all on by yourself. Don't do that to yourself. First of all, recognize resources that are available to you. This is always important. And Kim says, I would love to do a Relief Society lesson on some Sundays. There you go. So we have a group of sisters. I'm sure some people may be in a similar situation to you, or even if they're not, may, be interested in connecting and doing some study together. And Kim says, as a group. Yeah, totally. Oh, she's not volunteering to teach the lesson. She wants to make sure we know this is as a group. Yes, Kim, I hear you. Yeah, so I think there are people in this group who probably would also like to connect. I think take advantage of the resources that the Ward has put together. So like the spiritual thought and the musical number that have been coming out on Sundays, other things that maybe are coming from primary or different auxiliaries. So make sure you're taking advantage of those. If you don't know about them, ask your ministering sister or friend or something. And then I think the other tip I have for this person is I just want to make sure that you have expressed your feelings to your spouse. And a formula for doing that is just to state how you're feeling and then to give a straightforward request. And so you might say, I'm feeling really overwhelmed about doing church on Sundays. Do you think that this Sunday you could organize the agenda and make assignments or something? You would come up with what felt right for you. But I do just want to make sure that you feel like you have done that. And so, yeah, that's important. And that's a good formula always. We may come back to that with some of these other questions that people have. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling like you're taking everything on, and that's causing some tension or stress in your relationship, where you're like, hey, you're home. Why aren't you helping me with whatever? You need to say that, okay? You need to express what the feeling is and ask for some help. And the reason I'm trying to break it down is because sometimes we don't do it that way. Sometimes we are passive aggressive and we don't say anything, but we're frustrated and resentful. Or maybe we bring up the times when they should have been helping more, or they should have been doing something different, and we put them on the defensive, and that usually doesn't help. That never helps, really. Right. And so just in your mind to have a simple formula, express the feeling simply, I feel overwhelmed about this, or I feel stressed about this, or I feel sad about this, whatever. And can you please help me by doing such and such? And giving them a really specific request can be helpful. And if you have done that and it hasn't gone over well and it didn't go the way it needed to, then don't give up. I would say look outward, see what other resources you have in our ward, in our Relief Society. Okay, so anybody else who has tips on that, feel free to chime in at any time. Okay, this next one is a good one too. I really like this one. Somebody says, are there any tips for keeping your cool while doing homeschool with multiple kids and helping navigate the kids' emotions about missing school and friends and dealing with all of the many life changes right now? And how do you go about it on a kid's level? So I love this one. And I also love the chat because Kim Lawrence is going to be volunteered to teach a Relief Society lesson, I think. Sorry, that's funny. Okay, so yeah. So how do you help navigate that? How do you help them with some of their disappointment, maybe that they're missing out on things? And there was another one that I kind of would group with this. Somebody else asked about how do you help them deal with the disappointments and losses associated with the quarantine? So no prom, no graduation, no school trips, etc. So a lot of people are dealing with some disappointment right now. So I want to talk about how it is not your responsibility to come up with some kind of compensatory activity or something that's going to fix it for them or make them feel better. You can, if you want to. Maybe the school will, right? I know Tegan's teacher said to me, we're going to do a party later when we can all get together again. Maybe some people are going to do those kinds of things. The most powerful thing that you can do as a parent is to validate the emotion, right, for your kids. So if they're really feeling sad or disappointed that they missed their teacher or they missed their friends or they didn't get to have their graduation or some of the parties or events that they were looking forward to, then you get to use this formula. You get to say, yeah, that is really, I can tell that you're really sad. Sorry, I'm going to start over. I think the bright light is getting to me. You're going to point out what the feeling is, right? So, yeah, that is sad. And then you're going to try to give 3 reasons, right? Because. Okay. So, you're going to point out how they're feeling. Sorry, I keep redoing this. I hope I can just edit this little part out where I'm bumbling over my words. So you're going to say something like, you're really mad about that, or you're really sad about that because you had this awesome prom dress picked out and you were so excited to go with that guy and all your friends are going to be there, right? You come up with 3 pretty basic reasons, and you should try this on your kids or your spouse or friends or anybody, because you can usually see a visible sigh of relief or just expression that says, wow, it's so nice to have somebody understand what I'm going through. So that is the emotional support side. And then step 2 in providing support to somebody who's struggling is practical support. But the amazing miracle of this is sometimes you don't even need to do the practical support side. Sometimes you just show that you understand how somebody could be feeling and you put yourself in their shoes for a minute and you express that to them. And it feels so good that that's really what they needed. But you can still ask, you can say, is there something that we can do to help you feel better or to help you through this? And they might come up with something, or they might say, no, I don't think so. And that's all right. So that's what I wanted to say about that. It's really, really powerful. And there's a lot of research with that too, where they look at what's happening. Yes, empathy at its finest, Lindsay says. They look at brain scans. They look at what parts of the brain are activated, and it is instantly soothing to be validated, to have somebody understand what you're feeling. And so you should try that out. I think that's my biggest thing for that. And there was an aspect to that question too about keeping your cool while doing homeschool. And so you are really going to be trying to model some good emotional regulation for your kids during this time, because you might be getting frustrated because you have a lot on your plate and you're overwhelmed. And so not only are you going to help validate them, but you're going to do your best if you start to feel yourself getting amped up, or like you're going to blow your top or scream at them or whatever, that you can say that to them. You can say, you know what, I'm starting to get frustrated. I think I'm going to go in the other room and just take a breather for a little bit until I calm down. And then let's reconvene. You take a break. That's okay. And I think the other really important part of this, I was reading this article from somebody from like a trauma center. They were talking about the 3 R's. So it was routine and reassurance and regulation. So you want to give your kids a good routine. And I think that's how you manage this scenario, is you try your best to have a routine. This is when we're working on school. This is when we have some built-in breaks, whatever seems like it works for your family. And you're going to be reassuring them, right? So that's kind of the emotional validation that I was talking about, like saying, I know this is so hard for you. You're doing a good job. We're doing the best that we can as a family. And then regulation, which is A, you're going to model your own emotional regulation, where if you're getting out of control, you're going to take a little break. And then B, you are going to coach them when they're losing it, right? And you're going to say encouraging things, and you're going to just help them take a break if they need to, maybe help them take some deep breaths. Or if they're little, help them like pretend to blow some bubbles, or pretend like they're blowing out their birthday candles. Okay. So, some people said that they needed help, or that they were feeling disconnected from people. And I think that's a really common feeling. Oh, this is cute. Michelle De Benito says, not sure if anyone saw this, but John Krasinski held a prom for the teens missing out on prom. It happened a few days ago, but maybe they could recreate that again with friends to help. Cute. I saw the headline for that, but I didn't actually watch it. Was it just like a video that you could watch? Because you could probably go back and watch it, but I don't know how that works. Or yeah, maybe you could just watch it and get some ideas. But yeah, so just providing emotional support doesn't mean that there aren't going to be ways to jump in and also provide some practical support too that could really bless people. And so I think we all need to be open to revelation right now and inspiration, and just what do our kids need, or the people in our lives and our callings or other places, what do they need? Is there anything we can do? Yeah, he was a DJ for prom. You could probably watch it again. Okay. Yeah, so that might be something for people to look at. So anyway, I think somebody said feeling disconnected. And again, I'm sure other people have much better ideas than I do, but I would say just seeking out any kind of connection, and being creative and using technology. We're relying on a lot of technology right now. And I did write down to go with that. I'm not sure if this is a struggle for this person, but I would just say in general, we're going to feel more connected if we reach out in ways that are a little more personal than social media. So if you find yourself kind of over relying on social media to connect, then just maybe acknowledge that and say, I'm going to call my old college roommate today instead of commenting on her picture that she posted on Instagram, or, something like that, that just is one step closer to a more personal connection. Or even texting her would probably be a little bit, one step closer. And so just thinking about that, and being creative. I think we're all just trying to be creative. And like I said, being open to inspiration, and trying to rack our brains for what can we do to connect with people and who else. I was talking to my grandma a couple days ago, and I'm going to get to that, Michelle. That's such a good one. I just talked to my grandma, and she said, yeah, I wake up and I have all this time. She lives by herself, but she said, I have all this time, so I'm reading my scriptures for a long time, and then I just pray and I say, who could use my help today? And then she was telling me about how she calls people and stuff. And so I think looking outside of yourself is always, amazing if you can do that. If there's somebody that you could reach out to that could use a little extra support, and you're going to feel better if you do that for sure. So Michelle says, going outside, even for a short walk, has helped me a ton. And I've heard a lot of people saying that. And actually, a lot of people, I'm going to share some of these tips. I think we probably need to wrap up here kind of soon. But so I'm just going to share these because they're so good. Someone says, take it one day at a time. Find one way to have fun each day. Get outside as much as possible. Do something new that you wouldn't have time for in quarantine, wouldn't have had time for, I think, before you're in quarantine. Connect with friends and family in other ways. This person says, don't worry about other people's opinions. You do you, which makes me think maybe some of us compare what we're doing to what we think other people might be doing, or social media, what other people are portraying. We know that's a bad idea. Exercise. Okay, those are all awesome suggestions. Someone says, take time for yourself. Find time at least weekly to do something that makes you happy. Someone says, staying busy. Someone says, taking care of yourself as a wife or mother is important and should be a priority. This person says, we try to have a family activity every night after dinner. We also have been spending a lot more time outside, either individually or as a family. And one person says, one day at a time and getting good sleep. That's so important. I get lazy with my schedule sometimes when things get more relaxed, and then I stay up too late, and then I'm crankier, and then the emotion regulation stuff with kids is so much harder. So why do we do that to ourselves? Hopefully you guys are more disciplined than me, and you still go to bed on time and all that good stuff. We make it a point to get outside daily, also spend time together playing games and doing activities. So a few people have said getting outside. Somebody says too much chocolate and being outside. I liked that one. So I thought those were all really good. I think one thing I was just going to say is, yes, Amanda says she's a night owl and it's hard to wind down after the day. I totally agree. It is. So I think one thing I was going to say is, if you are starting to feel like you're kind of in a slump or a rut, you've been inside too long and something needs to change, I would just say choose one thing. Like, don't overwhelm yourself. Don't be like, okay, I'm home. Next week, I'm going to exercise every day and I'm going to eat perfect and I'm going to take my kids outside every single day and I'm going to get all these house projects done and I'm going to call the people I minister to and I'm going to study my scriptures for an hour every day. Like, don't come up with everything. Just listen to the Spirit and listen to what you know intuitively, and come up with maybe one thing to do. And yes, it's always so tempting to stay up late at night, right? Yeah, it is. So anyway, yeah, I hope that's helpful. I think that's pretty much what I had to share with you, but I'm sure I'll probably think of some things and you guys might think of some things afterwards. But that's what I was going to say, is just maybe choose one thing that you want to focus in on. And if you are trying to make some improvements or tighten up your routine, maybe just focus on one thing at a time for at least a week, I would say, before you stack on more things. Because going back to, we're just trying to find balance. And this is a time where we're just going to be a little bit gentle with ourselves and give ourselves some extra grace. And it's not really a time to beat yourself up or be super hard on yourself, because we are, I think, dealing with some stress. And some of it probably is stress that we're not even acknowledging. It's like under the surface. None of you said you were stressed about COVID-19. That's how many other stressors are stacked on top of that. So I think just give yourself a pass, recognize there might be some stuff going on under the surface. And anyway, this was really fun. I hope this is helpful. And feel free to share if you have any thoughts or anything that you want to talk more about. And I hope everybody has a good rest of your night. Bye.